We're live. We are live. Okay. Which card should I use today? I'm going to use the Tarot of the Sorceress today. I'm just going to quickly, because it makes a lot of noise sometimes. Message for us about the topic around spirituality meets science. Let's have a look. The shuffles are nice today and firm. That's the one. The Justice card. 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, let's do it. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to this episode of the Womanly Way podcast. I am your host, Lala Angela Wang. Oh my goodness, today is definitely a podcast recording kind of day. Literally just finished a really awesome interview earlier today with my friend and astrologer, Melanie Vera. So I'm super excited to share the episode with you guys shortly, or depending on how we go, it might be before this episode. So today I want to talk about when spirituality meets science. And this is really inspired by, I guess, a lot of the things that's been happening around my life, things I have witnessed, things that I feel like I'm being guided to a certain direction, and things around my belief around spirituality or around religion. But I thought, before we started this podcast, I know we started a tradition, which we don't always do, is to pull a card before a live recording of my podcast. So I did. And interestingly, so I'm using the Tarot of the Sorceress deck, which I absolutely love. It's almost like an occult version of the Tarot. And the Justice card came out. So I actually really love the Justice card because, especially in this deck, it's number 8 of the major arcana. But also in this deck, it represents a sacred feminine. I love it. She kind of looks like the witch or the wise woman. She's naked, but with a very elaborate shawl over her. So if you want to see this, if you are not watching me live and you want to see the card and the explanations, head over to my Instagram. That's where you'll see the details of my channel, the explanation, and then also the details of the card. So keyword for this card is normalization, balance, rule, and law. The Justice card calls for balance or the restoration of balance, cutting through and separating what needs to be sorted. Through its asymmetry, it is also an invitation to bring greater clarity, stability, and therefore balance to things. Justice is like a set of scale, represented here by its 2 blossoming sleeves. And then it goes on to say, this card can also evoke the need to do justice for yourself or others, or the law, the state, or the administration. However, it may be interesting to look for what else it wants to tell you beyond the obvious. Traditional keywords: balance, perfection, cutting through, value, judgment, cheating, authorization, prohibition, balancing. Like I said, I will be posting the details on my Instagram, so just feel free to jump over and have a look. Now, for me, justice as a word, as I evolve as a person, instead of balance, it's harmony. How do we create harmony in our world? And I think, and I find it interesting that we are pulling out this card when I'm talking about spirituality meets science. For me, I'm just thinking, do I want to talk about it now? Or do I want to talk about it later? No, I want to talk about it later. So the reason that what started my little, I guess, journey down the rabbit hole of spirituality meets science was really in the products that I am currently, well, the company that I'm currently in partnership with is called Frequence, and it is a category creating company in the health and wellness field. So essentially, what they do is they figured out a way to, would it be imprint, to infuse harmonic frequencies into health food product to enhance the potency and, I guess, to better support us as human beings. So in my partnership with this company, I reached out to one of my contacts. She is great with hormonal balancing and health. And I said, I think this might be something you might be interested to look into. So she's a practitioner into female hormonal balance. And so spirituality perhaps isn't something that she's, experienced in. So she asked me, she's like, have you got any scientific papers or studies or researches on harmonic frequency in terms of it as a medicine, the medicinal benefits, and how it's actually helping people with their hormones, hormonal balancing? So me being me, I wanted to know all the things. When someone asked me the question, because I don't want to be that person that just do random researches and then, literally just pass on information. I want to know it myself so I can actually explain it. If you go through my human design astrology, you'll know that in my chart, there's a component of me that's about communication. And it's really about communicating foreign language into human language. And when I say foreign language, often it's in a spiritual sense, right? Spiritual language into human language. And so a lot of what I'm trying to do of late is explaining spiritual terms, meanings, benefits, effect into physical human terms, into the 3D. So translating 5D into 3D. That's probably the best way that I can describe it. And it all started with me trying to explain what frequency is in human terms and how frequency can help us. Right, that's another complete different topic altogether. But what I've come together in the shortest version to explain this is that imagine your entire human body is like an 88 key piano. So a grand piano, 88 keys. That's what we call a full piano in music terms. And this is me linking back to my music background, right? And all of our organs, all of our systems, the glands, every part of our body is one of the key on the piano. So if you've ever played the piano, you know every now and then you need to get someone to come and tune it. Our body's the same. If we don't look after our body, parts of it will get out of tune. Same thing with the piano, as not all of the keys will get all out of tune together. They all get out of tune differently. Some might stay in tune, some might be out of tune a lot, some might be out of tune a little bit. And a job of a piano tuner is to retune every single key individually. So then you can play the beautiful melodies again. And when a key is out of tune, let's say even you only have one key that's out of tune on your piano, and when you play the music, so imagining our life is like the music that we're trying to play, and there's a key out of tune, then the whole piece of music is ruined or it will sound off. And that's when we are off as a human being, that we might find our life is off, our physical vessel is off, or, components of aspects of our life is out of tune. So what frequency does, and there's a lot of studies on frequency medicine. So what they've done, what scientists has done, is to find out the frequencies of the different parts of our body. So let's just go back a step. Essentially, everything on our planet, everything even down to, the physical things, let's say, my computer, my desk, the chair that I sit on, they all have a vibrational frequency. Everything. Something might be heavier, might be denser, so they vibrate slower, so they have a lower frequency. Or some things might be higher, they might have a higher frequency. And this is the same thing when people do the water test, how they put like beautiful music to the water crystal then become very beautiful. Whereas if you keep saying bad words, or if you put a swear word and stick it on a water jug, and hours later come back to that same water and you look at the water crystal that is formed in that water, you'll find the crystals are very disjointed and it's not as beautiful as the one that listened to classical music. So on that basis, scientists start to look at the different frequencies of the different parts of our body. And, this has been a long study where they now know which part of our body vibrates in what frequency. And through that, then let's say, the heart has a certain frequency. And if we want to enhance or support our heart, then you play that frequency and it will help us retune the heart back to its natural frequency. So if you imagine if we can create a series or a group of frequencies that allows us to tune the targeted areas in our body, then we will be able to realign those body parts or those organs or muscles or glands back into its natural state of being. So really it's about creating a harmony that hums, right? Instead of having a note that's out of tune. And why am I sharing this with you? And I think this is a great example of why spirituality doesn't have to be woo. It can be scientific, it can be logical, it can be explained in a way that it doesn't sound like airy-fairy. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I'm sensing more and more, and it's coming across my field, a lot of spiritual people saying, there's two sides to the story. A lot of spiritual people saying, well, I feel like I don't know how to communicate in human terms for normal human being to understand what it is that I do. But at the same time, you also get people who are not spiritual saying, well, I don't believe in spirituality because you have no facts. You have no proof of concept, basically. But if you really look at history, if you really look at all the greatest artists, right, in their artistry, there is science. Even in music, there's structure and there's form. You don't just create music out of nowhere. There's always a structure. Even if you say modern day music, if you look at rock and roll, there's always a base, a foundation to create those music. Even jazz. Jazz is probably the most fluid form of music because you improvise a lot, but there's always a base. It's either a chord or a melody, and then that gets evolved and moves around. So there's always science behind art, And why do I use art? Because art traditionally is the closest link to spirituality, to religion. If you look at the art forms, architecture, paintings, music, poetry, even down to stage performance. These are all art forms that were closely linked to religion in ancient times, classical, medieval. And for some reason, people link creative art to religion more, to spirituality more, compared to science. But if you look at all the greatest science, right? If you look at all the greatest musicians, they're not just a right brain person or left brain person. Quite often back in those days, they're both. It's just whether they're stronger in one or the other. Actually, I was listening to a podcast the other day talk about who is um who is oh my god, it escaped me just now. Tip of my tongue. Who is Shakespeare? And it talked about the historic reference of Shakespeare, who's this great writer, playwright, who's also good at science and maths and all those things. And then they were saying, actually, Shakespeare may not be a one person. It may just be a like a name that somebody put on. Not a real person, but maybe two or three people that decided to come together and share their wisdoms and knowledge. And then if you look at in history where there are religious wars, often science and maths are being treated almost like witchcraft, against the religion. Why is that? I mean, this is just me sharing the rabbit hole that I've been going down in, right? But the point of all this, I know it might sound like a whole lot of mumble jumble, but the point of all this is I truly believe that inside the spiritual community, we need to start a different dialogue. We need to start a different reality where instead of believing spirituality is woo woo and up in the air, bunch of people in la la land, I think we need to start looking at spirituality as living science. Astrology to me is science. It's facts. It's how the planets moved. There's historic references that you can go back to. And this is what I believe. And again, like I said, I've been down this rabbit hole. There was another podcast I was listening to the other day, and he was saying, one of the guys I was being interviewed, he said, I do have a religion, but my religion is spirituality. And I love that. There's planetary movements at the moment where you're seeing a lot of people become born again. And there's this walk away from new age spirituality back to traditional religions and beliefs. And then there's all these people in between, believing that their spirituality or their religion is better than the other. But I truly believe if we really head down the route of looking at beliefs, looking at spirituality, looking at religion, the fundamentals is really about being. It's really about allowing ourselves to come back home to whether it's God, whether it's spirit, whether it's Buddha, whether it's the Prophet Muhammad, or whether it's coming home to ourselves, or whether it's God, Jesus, whatever, right? The fundamentals is really about us coming home to something. And that's because fundamentally I think we all believe that we're connected. Fundamentally. You might be like, no, Lala, you can't say that's what I believe in. But coming home to ourselves, I truly believe, is us coming home to knowing that we are magnificent. We are all connected. And we are God, essentially. Because, God, Buddha, universe created us, or Mother Earth, depending on what you believe in, created us as a exact image of an aspect of them. In human form, we're here to experience life as human beings and learn our lessons. That's what I believe in. But there are great wisdoms in all of these lessons that's linked to math, to science, to advancement, to creativity. Even though we think we cannot explain it, there are also so many things that we can explain. And ultimately, for me, science and math is about creativity. Science and math is about a different kind of creativity, but you need to have creativity in order to explore and experience and experiment and create new things, right? It's tapping into a different part of our brain, but it's still creative. So I think we need to start treating our left brain and right brain not as separate, because that creates separateness. And we need to start looking at everything as one: spirituality, religion, science, math, creative art. All of these things are intertwined. And I think that's why I pulled out the Justice card, what represents balance. And to me, balance means harmony. Is that ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a big mishmash of creating harmony in our lives. We may want more of something and less of another, but there's no separation. It's all a part of us. And I think if we can all communicate from a place of there's no separation, then we can actually communicate a lot better. Because when there's no separation, we can then feel into each other's energy. We can then explain things from each other's perspective. And it's really about going down to the fundamentals, right? This is going back to, NLP 101. It's really all about understanding others and communicate in a way that the other people can understand. The moment that we create separateness, we lose all that, because then it's all about me. It's all about ego. It's about, and this is really it's brain science. It's science. It's not spirituality. The separation thing that, it's not. It's how our brain is formed. It's how our brain thinks. It's how judgment is formed. The moment that you have separateness, our brain immediately think it's different. And when it's different, our logical brain wanted to separate things. And that's how separateness is created. But if we think we're all the same, ultimately at the end of the day, it's what Brene Brown said, right? Everybody is doing their best. We're all the same, and we all just want to do our best. If we all come from the place of that, there's no one is more superior and no one is more better or worse then we can communicate at the same level. And when we communicate at the same level, our brain can tap into the creativity side of us. And when we really, when you really, really, really want to communicate a point across, like when you think back when you were a child and you're really trying to communicate to your parents or persuade them how important it is for them to buy that chocolate bar, wouldn't you find out all of the different ways to persuade them, even if it means throwing a tantrum? If you really, really desire to communicate something, and this is my message to the healers, it is definitely coming through me as a channel. If you really, really want to communicate something for the greater good of human beings, wouldn't you try your best and do everything and understand what other people want to understand? Wouldn't you then think, how can I communicate this in the 3D, in the science, in the logic, in the physical, so then other people can understand it rather than just saying, well, it just is. I just feel this. I don't know, but this is how I'm feeling. Right? I think we've passed the stage where you can just, well, that's just how I feel. This is how I feel because has far more power than, well, this is just how I feel. I know this is starting to sound like a rant, but I think society needs to stop empowering people to say using, well, this is how I feel, and you need to respect it as an excuse. I'm not saying your feelings not validated. I'm not saying because you're feeling this way, then you can throw a tantrum. A lot of adults throw tantrums these days, different kind of tantrum, obviously. But we need to learn to not only feel, but communicate how we feel and understand that we are all one. The moment that you block someone out and say, you don't understand me, you're creating the separation. Instead, I would encourage everybody to think, well, I think what we're trying to do is to both understand each other. And if we can work together, then we can understand each other better. Then we can work together better. And this is the whole point, I think, of this podcast, is that I would love to see a more cohesive, a more come together, a more harmonized world. And I think that starts with us creating an environment that is I'm not going to say no separation, because that might be a big step on where we are now. But in our day-to-day life, creating an environment that has less separation. Seeing each other as one from a spiritual perspective, but also from a frequency perspective. If all our organs and things are all vibrating at the same frequency, then if we vibrate at the same frequency, we can understand each other, right? And that's why what I meant by we're all connected, because we're all connected through the frequency. I hope this doesn't sound like a super woo conversation, and it's actually, for those of you who wanted to understand more about frequency, more about vibration, more about spirituality, more about the woos, perhaps this gives you a different doorway into it. But I just feel like this was a message that I needed to share today. For the reason of creating more harmony in our society, creating more oneness, more togetherness, and less separation. So if this is the message for you, I hope that you find it gives you whatever that you needed right now. And on that note, that's me for today. And thank you so much for listening. I will see you next time. Bye.